Jai Hind. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all my viewers. This is my fifth lecture, and I think you have seen my 4 other lectures on this series of overview of industrial engineering, and we have been talking about production, productivity, and the basics of this subject. And the subject code is KME 503. It is for BTech Mechanical Engineering, 3rd year, 5th semester. The subject name is Industrial Engineering. So today we'll be actually talking about the measurement of productivity, and we'll go to lecture 5, and this is the last lecture of this overview of Industrial Engineering Unit 1, and then we'll proceed to other topics also. So this is the 5th lecture, Unit 1, and we have already completed types of production systems, concept of productivity, and today we'll be talking about productivity management, measurement, right? So when we talk about productivity measurement, we talk about how we actually measure this productivity, because we have already talked about production and productivity, and when I talk about production, then we basically talk about the system. The system which basically produces is basically a production system. And concept of productivity basically talks about the economic aspect, that how much profitably we are actually producing the products, right? So today we'll be talking about productivity measurement. So there is a link between these 3 terms, that is productivity, efficiency, and effectiveness, because once I go to productivity index and the way to measure it, we have to talk about the productivity and the relationship with efficiency and effectiveness. So if we really see, productivity is very often confused with the terms efficiency and effectiveness. So when I talk about effectiveness, we see that these are the terms, efficiency and effectiveness are basically correlated with productivity, but how it is correlated, this is never explained, and this is never understood by lots of people. So we will basically take this up, and we'll then proceed to the measurement techniques. Though related, all the 3 terms carry different meanings. So productivity is very often confused with the terms efficiency and effectiveness. Though related, all 3 terms carry different meanings. So we'll start with efficiency. We all know efficiency. Efficiency, it is the ratio of the actual output attained to the standard expected output. Therefore, efficiency indicates a measure of how well the resources are utilized to accomplish a target or result, right? So we have to see to it that the output is attained to the standard expected output. So that is what the ratio is, and by this we can understand how well the resources are utilized to accomplish a target or a result, right? This is basically termed by nu also as a term, as a symbol. And then we come to effectiveness. It is the degree of accomplishing the objective. Therefore, effectiveness indicates a measure of how well a set of targets or results are accomplished. So we'll see in details, actually with a diagram also, we'll see how actually this productivity and effectiveness is basically efficiency and effectiveness are related, right? Productivity is an integration of both efficiency and effectiveness. So people relate it. Somehow it is also correct, but we have to bifurcate the things and understand how efficiency and effectiveness helps to get the productivity, right? So before actually understanding the measurement of productivity, we basically talk about effectiveness and efficiency. So when I talk about these 3 terms, we basically also talk about the combined effect of efficiency and effectiveness is used in defining a term called productivity index. Now, this is something that we are going to do in this lecture, and we'll basically analyze and see in details how this productivity index can be measured, right? Since effectiveness is difficult to measure quantitatively, and productivity index decreases when efficiency increases at a given effectiveness which is not acceptable, this definition is modified as follows. Now, productivity index is performance achieved by input resources consumed, right? So when I actually see, then performance achieved is basically effectiveness, and input resources consumed, how well it is consumed is efficiency. So productivity index is how much performance we are getting, right, by the like utilization of the resources that we have. So, we can easily say that it is basically effectiveness by efficiency. This can be termed, these are two functions actually, it can be termed by F1 by F2. So, we can also see it as productivity index is equal to two functions, that is effectiveness and efficiency. Now, we actually go to the types of productivity index that we will be seeing in this in the next slides. So, these are labor productivity, direct labor cost per productivity, capital productivity, direct cost productivity, total cost productivity, foreign exchange productivity, energy productivity and raw material productivity. So, these are the terms that basically comes with any type of productivity or the production system. So, if we are actually managing a production systems, so these are the terms that basically plays a vital role in defining the productivity of a system, right. So, we will be coming to the measurement now. We will see how these terms are used and how it is measured. So, this is a very simple diagram that basically talks about a production system where there is input, there is operations and there is output, and there is a feedback and control that also works out here. So, if we really see it here, so here it is input and here it is operation, here it is output, and there is a feedback control that works here. And if there something goes wrong, it will go back here, right. This is the customer that we basically work for. These are the external environment that we are working on. This is a system productivity that comes up. So, if we really see here, the capital material, this term if you see, the capital material quality, material availability, labor quality, energy, plant capacity, and this is proper use of input so that the better output is achieved, plus the quality mindset is what efficiency all about. It is the how well we are using the resources of the system. Now, if I really see, there is another thing, that is the organization, product mix, management, level of technology, utilization of machines, plant utilization. So, proper use of systems and tools and things, continuous improvement is basically effectiveness, right. It is basically effectiveness. So, how we can actually take out the output, right. So, when these two are matched together, the addition of these two basically gives us the productivity. The productivity is product quality, services, customer delight, low cost, high production, better use of technology. So, how well input gets converted into output is actually productivity. Proper use of the system is system effectiveness. Proper use of the input is basically efficiency. Now, with this, we are in a clear picture that productivity is nothing but it is again effective, basically combination of these two aspects is basically productivity. And when I talk about productivity index, it is effectiveness by efficiency, right. So, we will move forward. Now, we will see different approaches to measure productivity. So, there are three basic ways by which we can measure this productivity. This is partial productivity, total factor productivity and total productivity. So, we will see how they are different and what are their limitations, what are their advantages in the system, and that way basically we can understand how we can measure these three things, right. So, this is, as its name says, if I give a gist about it, its name says that if I bifurcate the total inputs rightly, and then I can easily understand how much partially the productivity is working. So, at times we do not need the other inputs to be calculated. So, total output divided by the partial inputs basically gives us the partial productivity. So, this basically helps us to understand very specific factors where we are actually lagging behind. And when I talk about total factor productivity, is basically two terms that we will see, the two terms that we actually work it here, and the total is basically the total productivity. So, this is the total concepts, these are partial, this is a bit more than a partial, and this is the total one. So, there are three ways we basically can do it, right. So, we come to the partial productivity aspect. When I take the partial productivity, it is nothing but partial productivity is defined based on the class of input being considered. So, whenever I take the input, right, the output is the total output that comes out. So, we can bifurcate and see how much my inputs are helpful in taking out the output. So that is what the partial productivity is all about. So if I really see the table, I can see that that is labor per productivity or human per productivity. In this case, what we do is we take the human inputs to understand the effect of the increase or decrease of hiring the labor to see how they perform, right? So this is what we actually see here. So this is the human input. The human input basically is basically quantified, and it is taken by their the cost that the company is bearing for them, right? And this is the output that the company is having, right? When I see this, the output is having. So this is actually labor productivity. Then I come to material per productivity. In this case, what happens is there is output by material input. So how much material it is used. So if in this case we say that labor productivity is basically, it depends on hiring of the labor. When I talk about taking up people or the employees, we will see that what is the impact of the labor per productivity. So then depending on that, we can hire. When I talk about material per productivity, we should see to it that the cost of the material should be negotiated rightly, so that the cost is not too high, so that the per productivity goes down here. When I talk about capital per productivity, it is nothing but it is output by capital input. It is the financial assessment that basically talk about. In the material productivity, it was material management that basically was material management basically talks about the negotiations that we do, the vendor selection procedures that we do, because we have to see to it that the cost of the product is fairly standard, and the quality of the product is also not going down due to the cost aspect, because we are actually always bargain with the cost and we basically compromise on the quality. So as an engineer, you must make sure that you don't compromise on the quality of the input materials, right? So energy per productivity is also there. It is the consideration of energy required by the system, and then advertising and media planning per productivity is also there. So an output by all the terms basically talks about output divided by the input, the input that we have given to the system. So it is nothing but if I really see a production system, it is nothing but it is input, operations and output. So when the output comes up, we must divide it with the input so that the index can be easily calculated, right? So then other expenses of the per productivity can be also taken up. So output by other expense inputs, right? So in the analysis of the system, so other expense input can be taken up, and like this we can easily find out the partial per productivity aspect. Now this second type of measurement is nothing but it is total product factor per productivity. In this case, what we do is we take the labor and the capital inputs. So the human and the capital inputs if we take. So this is total factor productivity. So if we really see and analyze the fact and understand this fact a bit more, we'll realize that the total factor productivity talks about the two basic things, right? One is the capital that is used. Capital also includes the money that I have invested on the machines or the system or the infrastructure, and then the amount of money that I am paying to the laborers. So when I actually see the labor plus capital inputs, then it is actually total factor per productivity comes up. So that is what we basically see is total output minus the intermediate goods and services purchased. So total output, we also subtract the intermediate goods that we purchase from outside, and then that becomes the total output and the actual output, and then the labor and divided by labor plus capital input. So if I see this, we'll realize that this basically gives us a fairly good measurement of the system, so that we can easily understand how we are going well and what is the productivity of the system. Now we'll go for the total factor productivity and see the advantages of this, right? Because we have seen the partial productivity also. In the case of partial productivity, we really see, we can see a sector of the the productivity. We can only see just a partial part of the productivity. So it is never a complete picture that we can see. So at times it happens that the productivity, partial productivity is shown, and it is shown to the management, and it is the management assumes that things are all going right, but at times it is not going right. So partial productivity is something that we should avoid doing, which we should at least go for total factor productivity before we take a decisions, right. The advantage of total factor productivity, if you see, it is relatively easy to compile data from the company records. Economists prefer this as it is easier to compare in cross industry context. So if I really see, this basically helps us to understand the productivity factor of different industries around the system. So this can be easily taken out, the amount of capital that they have invested and the labor cost that they are incurring on that, and depending on that we can have the productivity of different industries around it. Limitations of total factor productivity is many important inputs such as material, energy, etc. are ignored, because here we are just using, one is capital and one is your labor. So other inputs like material, energy and etc. are basically not considered. So that way it is somewhere it will also not give you a clear picture or the total picture of the productivity that this company is having. The net output does not reflect the efficiency of the production system in a proper way. This is very true, that efficiency is how rightly we are using the system. So this is not cannot be judged by this total factor productivity, right. Now we come to the total productivity, and here we see that it is the ratio of total output to the sum of all the input factors. So this is the last method by which we can take out the total productivity. But the other two terms basically talks about that how we actually can also take out partially, and we can find out where we are going wrong, because if I actually do the partial productivity calculations, I will have a clear picture that how much is the part of that factor in the total output of the system. So that way that is also helpful, but if we really want to see the total productivity aspect, we have to take account of all the inputs factors that are used to take out the output, right. It considers all the outputs and the input factors. Therefore, it is more accurate representation of real economic performance of the organization. It is easy for top management to understand the company performance. So this is very important. If you really see this term, that it is easy for the top management to understand the company performance. It considers all the inputs, the all term you must understand, and input factors. This all is a very important factor that I am talking it here. Therefore, it is more accurate. It is more accurate also representation of the real economic performance. So this is real economic performance. If I leave something which is giving you more cost and I am not considering this in the output aspect, then I am not actually talking about the real and the actual performance, right. So it is used along with partial productivity. So it is also a fact that if it is used along with the partial productivity, focused areas of improvements may be identified. So this is very important, that I have already told that partial productivity will help us, but we must take the inputs of this total. We must take the inputs of total productivity also, because if we use the productivity and we don't see the total productivity also, will not have the clear picture or the right picture of this, right. So when I actually see this, then we can also go for that. It is easy for cost accountants to compare. It is easy to do sensitivity and analysis. Now, when I talk about sensitivity, now sensitivity basically says which are the factors which, if something goes wrong with these factors, the total system gets disturbed. So we have to see where are the critical areas. So, to understand the critical areas, this total productivity plays a very vital role. So, if I see the critical areas or the factors that are sensitive to my system, so I have to go for total productivity measure. So, this way we can actually understand that total productivity measure basically helps us to understand that things are in the right fashion, and it must be used with the partial productivity also. Because when I talk about partial productivity aspect, we see that the total the total output is understood rightly. So, limitations of this total productivity is it is difficult to generate company wise and sector wise data. Many indirect measures of input and output are ignored. So, here in this case we can see that the input and the output direct measures, indirect measures are basically this is actually a direct measures and we take whatever is accountable, but there are some indirect measures also which are basically ignored in this case. So, once this total, if I really jot down the things in right way now we know what is the productivity and how the things are working in my company. So, if I run a company, I have to understand that these are the places where I can improve. Now, to improve, there are some management sciences that comes in picture, and then we have lots of work management. There are some management techniques that we use here. There are some planning zones on strategies that we actually talk. So, this total production now comes into the hand of management systems, and the management sciences basically helps us to maintain the productivity level high. And that is the reason we have the management concepts, we have the managers, we have got the strategists, we have got the MBAs and the people who actually are very good at managing the things rightly, so that the productivity is never going down, and we have to keep the things in a very positive fashion. If I really see the efficiency part, we have to see to it that there is a mental setup that is required, a right mental level is required to maintain a productivity in a system. So, if we really see, after we are done with this unit 1 and the basics of industrial engineering, we can come to a picture that basically helps us to understand that production and productivity are basically connected. Productivity and efficiency and effectiveness are also connected. So, to maintain everything we need management sciences, and we have to make sure that the things are managed properly. So, this is also a term that comes in with the industrial management, and then we can actually improve on the aspects that are going wrong by using partial productivity measures. And then we should always make sure that we consider the total productivity also while we are actually seeing the partial productivity measures, right? So all the things are to be correctly done, and then there is a planning of the things that is required. And there are 3 types of planning that we actually do is the short term planning, the medium term planning, and the long term planning. If I am talking about a short term planning, I am talking about 1 hour to 1 year's time, in which I plan the things in such a way that nothing goes wrong. And it is basically done in weeks time or monthly or a season. In a season, we basically plan the things or make the strategies in such a way that the productivity is never going down. Then there is a medium term, which basically varies from 1 to 5 years. And in this case, we basically use lots of methods. See, in the coming lectures, we'll talk about how we basically plan it and what are the way we basically manage the things so that the output is rightly taken out. So, when I talk about medium term planning, we basically talk about 1 to 5 years, and then we use some quantitative methods, some qualitative methods to take the data and make sure that the productivity is increased. And then there is a long term planning, which basically talks about the horizon is long term, means it is more than 5 years. So, company have a vision to increase the productivity in such a way that the company is in the profit and is in the business, right? So, this is what this last lecture of this, the first unit and the introductory topic of industrial engineering has to offer. So, with this I end this this lecture, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe to AKGEC YouTube channel, and please follow us in these videos, and please do write any comments or any questions that you have. We'll be happy to help you out. Thank you.